Hello, distant students. Here's some notes on vocabulary for genetics. We have gene, a section of DNA that controls the traits of an organism. So on the DNA strand that we've talked about, there's lots of genes. On there, there's something called alleles. There's always two forms of the gene. You get one from your mother, you get one from your father. Okay? Depending upon what your father and mother have from their parents, it depends what you're going to get. Okay, so here's just an example of what could happen. Um, here, one parent has two dominant alleles for, we could say, tall, and here one parent has two recessive alleles for being short. And if they had a child, they would end up with giving one of each to their offspring. So another way to look at it in these alleles, you could set up a Punnett Square, and this Punnett Square could look like this. Here is one of your parents up here, one of your parents down here, and you match those and put them together in the boxes. And here what you would have is one parent, if they had two small recessive alleles for being short instead of tall, they would be short. And if the other parent has two alleles for being tall, they would then share those two for their offspring, and it would turn out this is what the offspring or their children would look like. Okay? So in this case, tall is dominant. So tall would be transferred here, and it would show up in this child, this child, this child, and this child in this case, if this is what your parents had for alleles. Okay, now let's go down here and take a look at some of these genetic vocabulary words. You can just look through these for right now. And again, dominant trait, dominant genes, alleles is the trait that will show up depending upon what it is. It could be tall, it could be brown hair versus blonde hair. It could be blue eyes versus brown eyes. It could be whatever comes together. One of them will definitely be dominant and one's going to be recessive, meaning it won't show up physically, right? But it's in that person and they could give that allele to their offspring. Okay? So, and it makes a difference who they would have children with, because again, that person would have these either dominant or recessive traits on that gene. So here, capital letter is expressed with a capital dominant allele. Small letters are the recessive. Homozygous is a term used if the parent has two dominant or two recessive alleles for a certain trait, whatever that would be, whatever it could be. It could be tongue rolling. Can you roll your tongue? Okay, well, either being able to roll your tongue or not being able to roll your tongue, one of them is dominant, one of them is recessive. If your father or mother can do the tongue rolling or one of them can't, it would then determine upon, can you do it? Okay, and in order to do that, you could have different letters to show that, to find out. Heterozygous is if you received a dominant one from one of your parents and a recessive one from one of your parents. Depending upon what that trait is, the dominant of that trait would show up in you if this was the case. It's called a hybrid. So TT is produced when two purebred parents have young, right? So that's just like this back here. This is going to show up. And we just use the letter T just because we're talking probably tall or short, a trait. Here is another, I want to make sure, yep, another couple things. So two parents who are both purebreds of opposite genotypes, they have 4 children. So genotypes means that this is how you express that trait, is with these letters. This is a genotype, okay? So if we're going to use, say, straight hair versus curly hair, right? You either get one or the other. So capital S would be for straight hair, because straight hair, I definitely know, is dominant. Curly hair is recessive. So here's a parent with curly hair, and having curly hair, they need to have both recessive alleles. And here, this person or parent has 2 dominant for straight hair. And so that would put them up here, and the other one with the curly hair here, their children would all have straight hair. Okay? I don't know if this makes sense. I hope it does. And so you'll go on with this assignment, and you have this one here, and you're going to do this. So now you're going to go through and do this from your notes. So it says, for each genotype, indicate whether it's heterozygous or homozygous. If you look back at your notes, and you'll figure it out. So capital A, 2 dominant alleles for a trait, well, that would be homozygous. They're the same. So that's homozygous. And whatever that trait is, it would definitely be a dominant, whatever it would stand for, AA would stand for. Here, BP with a small p, this is a heterozygous. This is a heterozygous genotype. And so you're going to be putting HE for heterozygous, HO for homozygous, and you go on and do that for each of these, depending upon which one you're going to pick. Then it says, for each of the genotypes below, determine the phenotype. Phenotype is what is expressed. What is expressed. So if you're talking about traits of hair color and brown hair or blonde hair, the phenotype is blonde hair. Okay, that's a phenotype, what you can actually see. Now the genotype might be a capital B and a little b. So that's, genotypes have to do with how you express it with letters. So for instance, this first one, purple flowers are dominant to white. Well, look, dominant would be P, capital P, capital P. This right here would be a purple flower. So you would write purple flower. That's the phenotype. Capital P, little p, that would be a purple flower because you have 1 dominant and 1 recessive. And here are 2 recessive. So you would put white right here. You would put purple for these 2 because they have 1 dominant, and that's going to be showing. That will show up. Okay, so you'd go through these and do that. Same with these. And down here, you would put your letters across like I showed you. Here you would take these. So capital R with a little r, little r, little r, and then you would see what the offspring would do. And then it says what percentage of the offspring will be round. Okay, so up here, the trait studied is round seeds dominant, wrinkled seeds recessive. So it says what percentage of the offspring will be round. So once you get these in here, figure out what the offspring is, how many will be actually round that's in here. We have 4 spaces, so each one would be 25%, each box, right? Okay, so you'll do that throughout here, and then you'll answer these questions down here the best you can as well. You can do this on a separate sheet of paper, or you can do it right on here. Take your time and have fun with it, and that's your assignment. So take care, ask questions if you need to. Bye-bye.